What happens when a beloved Hollywood icon, charming, polished, and famously diplomatic, decides he's had enough and pushes back live on daytime television? Before we step into that moment, before the air shifts in the studio and the smiles freeze under hot lights, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now. Like this video. Comment below with where you're watching from, because what you're about to witness isn't just another celebrity interview. It's a collision, and you won't want to miss how it unfolds. The studio lights blaze down on the familiar semicircle of the set at the View. The audience hums with anticipation, a low electric murmur of expectation. It's supposed to be a feel-good segment, a charming interview, a safe space for banter and laughter. And then he walks out. Hugh Jackman steps onto the stage with that easy, practiced grin, the one that has carried him through red carpets, award ceremonies, and late-night shows for decades. He waves. The audience erupts. Applause cascades over him like a warm tide. He's wearing a tailored navy suit, open collar, relaxed. Effortlessly charismatic. The kind of presence that fills a room before he even speaks. Across the table sits Joy Behar. Sharp-eyed, seasoned, unapologetically direct. She leans back slightly, fingers laced together, a half-smile playing at her lips. The camera cuts to the wide shot. Polite greetings. Handshakes. Laughter. "So good to have you back," one of the co-hosts beams. "It's always good to be here," he replies warmly. His Australian accent smooth, steady. "You ladies keep me on my toes." Joy tilts her head. "Oh, we try." The audience chuckles. They start light, his latest project, a behind-the-scenes anecdote from filming, a funny story about choreography gone wrong. Hugh delivers effortlessly, timing impeccable. He stands, reenacts a stumble, bows theatrically. The audience eats it up. But Joy watches. Her expression shifts almost imperceptibly. The smile tightens. The questions begin to change shape. "So," Joy says, adjusting her glasses, voice slicing gently through the laughter, "you've been in this industry a long time. You've played heroes, leaders, strong men." She pauses. "Do you think Hollywood still protects men like you?" The audience quiets slightly. Hugh blinks once. A microsecond of recalibration. "I'm not sure what you mean," he says carefully. Joy leans forward. "I mean, do you think men in powerful positions get more grace than women? More forgiveness?" A ripple moves through the crowd. It's not hostile. Not yet. But the air shifts. Hugh nods slowly. "I think the industry has changed a lot. And it still has a long way to go. Accountability matters. Fairness matters." Joy presses. "But have you personally benefited from that imbalance?" The camera zooms just slightly closer to Hugh's face. He smiles again, but this time it doesn't reach his eyes. "I've worked very hard for everything I've earned," he says, tone even. "And I've tried to treat people with respect." Joy shrugs lightly. "That's not exactly what I asked." A faint murmur from the audience. The other hosts glance at each other. Hugh inhales. Slow, controlled. He's done hundreds of interviews. He knows how to dance around tension. He knows how to pivot. But something in Joy's tone, measured, insistent, lands differently. "I think," he says, choosing each word with precision, "that assuming someone's success is primarily the result of systemic favoritism can diminish the years of dedication behind it." There it is. The first spark. Joy's eyebrow arches. "So you don't think there's systemic favoritism?" "I didn't say that," he replies calmly. "I said reducing any individual's journey to that alone can be unfair." The applause is hesitant, scattered claps from somewhere in the back. Joy's smile fades just a fraction. "You're very good at this," she says. Answering without answering. The audience laughs nervously. Hugh chuckles softly. Occupational hazard. But beneath the humor, something tightens. His posture straightens. Shoulders square. The warmth dims, replaced by a quiet resolve. Joy folds her arms. "Let's be direct then. There have been debates about casting decisions recently, about who gets roles, who doesn't. You've had some iconic ones. Do you ever step aside to make room?" The implication hangs in the air like smoke. A close-up shot reveals Hugh's jaw flexing. "I audition like everyone else," he says. "I prepare. I commit. And if I'm chosen, I give everything I have." Joy interrupts. "But do you consider whether someone else might deserve the opportunity more?" Now the audience is silent. The tension is tangible. You can almost hear the cameras whirring. Hugh's eyes lock with Joy's. No smile now. "With respect," he says slowly, "I don't believe art is a zero-sum game." Joy leans back. That sounds idealistic. And assuming I should step aside based on factors unrelated to performance feels reductive. A few audience members clap, stronger this time. Joy's lips press thin. So you don't think responsibility comes with privilege? I think responsibility comes with character, he replies. And I try to show up with integrity. There's steel in his voice now. Calm steel. The other hosts attempt to lighten the mood. Let's talk about your new film. But Joy isn't finished. One more thing, she says quickly. You've been praised for being one of the good ones. How does that feel? Hugh tilts his head. How does what feel? Being called one of the good ones. Among men, a collective inhale from the crowd. Hugh's expression changes, not anger. Not yet, but something deeper. A flicker of disappointment. I don't love that phrase, he admits. Joy nods sharply. Why not? Because it implies the baseline expectation is poor. The audience reacts, soft murmurs of agreement. And it suggests, he continues, voice growing firmer, that decency is exceptional rather than standard. I don't want applause for basic respect. Joy crosses her legs, unfazed. So you reject the praise? I reject the framing. There's a pause, long enough to feel. Joy leans in once more, eyes narrowing slightly. You know, some might say it's easy to speak about integrity when you're at the top. And that's when it happens. Not an outburst. Not a shout. A shift. Hugh's hands, resting calmly on the table, clasped together. His gaze doesn't waver. It's never easy, he says quietly. It's necessary. The words land heavy. For years, he continues, I've tried to navigate this industry with humility. I've made mistakes. I've learned. But I won't accept the idea that my success must come at someone else's expense, or that I should apologize for earning it honestly. A wave of applause breaks out, louder, more confident. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but the energy has changed. The audience is no longer just watching. They're choosing sides. The camera pans across faces, some nodding, some frowning. A young woman in the front row whispers to her friend. A man in the back claps enthusiastically. Joy lifts her chin. No one's asking you to apologize. It feels like you are, he replies, still composed. Or at least suggesting I should. Gasps. Audible this time. The other hosts exchange alarmed glances. Joy's voice sharpens slightly. I'm asking you to acknowledge reality. And I am, Hugh says. But reality is complex. Silence. You could cut it with a knife. The director behind the scenes gestures frantically. The segment is running long. But no one wants to cut away. Because this is no longer small talk. This is a clash of philosophies. Joy's fingers tap against the table. So what would you say to critics who think actors like you dominate the spotlight? Hugh's eyes soften, not with surrender, but with resolve. I'd say there's room for many lights. The audience exhales. And instead of dimming one, he adds, we should focus on turning more on. Applause swells again. Joy studies him, searching for cracks. You're very polished, she says finally. Hugh smiles faintly. I've had practice. But beneath that calm exterior, you can sense it, the heartbeat quickening, the adrenaline coursing. This isn't a red carpet anymore. This is live, unscripted, unfiltered, and the pushback has only just begun. Because Joy isn't known for retreating. And Hugh Jackman has just drawn a line. The lights burn hotter. The audience leans forward. And somewhere behind the cameras, a producer whispers, keep rolling. The storm is building. And this was only the first gust. The applause fades, but the tension does not. It lingers in the air of the view like static before lightning. The cameras remain locked. The red tally lights glow. Millions are watching. Joy Behar doesn't blink. You talk about turning more lights on, she says, voice steady but sharpened at the edges. But isn't that easy to say when you've already had decades in the spotlight? Across from her, Hugh Jackman shifts slightly in his chair. Not retreating. Adjusting. It's never easy, he replies. Success doesn't cancel responsibility. But it also doesn't invalidate hard work. Joy's fingers tap against her cue card. Tap, tap, tap. Let me be blunt, she continues. When the same faces keep getting cast, when the same names dominate the box office, doesn't that limit opportunity for others? A murmur ripples through the audience again. Hugh nods once. It can. Joy's eyebrows lift. She wasn't expecting that. But, he continues before she can interject, the solution isn't shaming individuals for their careers. It's changing systems thoughtfully. Joy leans forward. Systems are made of individuals. And individuals aren't symbols, Hugh replies. They're people. A hush falls. There's something different in his tone now. It's still calm, but it's firmer. Less polished. More personal. Joy studies him carefully. Do you see yourself as a symbol? Hugh exhales softly through his nose. No, he says. I see myself as someone who's tried to say yes to roles that challenge me, who's tried to support new talent, who mentors where I can. But I'm not a stand-in for every problem in Hollywood. A few claps scatter from the audience. Joy tilts her head. No one's saying you are. But when people point out imbalance and someone like you pushes back, it can sound defensive. That word hangs in the air. Defensive. Hugh's eyes flicker, not with anger, but recognition. The narrative forming in real time. I'm not defensive, he says evenly. I'm protective. Of what? Joy shoots back. Of fairness. The audience reacts, some gasps, some applause. Joy crosses her arms. Fairness for whom? For everyone, he replies. Including the idea that someone's success doesn't automatically mean someone else was denied. Joy lets out a short laugh. Not amused, disbelieving. That's very idealistic, she says. In reality, resources are limited. So is patience, Hugh answers quietly. That lands harder than he intended. The audience stiffens. Joy's eyes narrow. Are you suggesting I'm impatient? I'm suggesting, Hugh says, careful now, that conversations like this require nuance. There it is again. That wordless shift. One of the co-hosts attempts to interject, voice light and diplomatic. I think what Joy is saying is. Joy raises a hand slightly. No, I can speak for myself. The studio grows still. Behind the cameras, a producer whispers into a headset. The clock is ticking. The segment is long past its safe window. But nobody dares cut to commercial. Joy looks back at Hugh. Let's talk about your most iconic role, she says. You played a character that defined masculinity for a generation. She doesn't say the name. She doesn't have to. The audience knows. Hugh nods. You've spoken about evolving beyond that image, Joy continues. But do you think those portrayals contributed to a narrow standard? Hugh leans back slightly, considering. Any character can influence culture, he says. But I never approached that role as a blueprint for manhood. It was a story, a flawed, complex character. Joy presses. But audiences don't always separate fiction from aspiration. That's true, Hugh admits. Which is why I've tried to speak openly about vulnerability. About growth. About compassion. Joy studies him again. And yet, when confronted with systemic critique, you resist. I resist simplification, Hugh corrects. A stronger wave of applause now. Joy's lips tighten. So you're saying the critique is simplistic? I'm saying, Hugh replies, voice lowering slightly, that boiling decades of work down to a checkbox, privileged, unprivileged, misses the human story. The room feels smaller. The audience is no longer just reacting. They're leaning in, eyes wide, breaths shallow. Joy taps her card again. Let me ask you this. If you were starting today, unknown young, do you believe you'd have the same opportunities? The question slices cleanly. Hugh doesn't answer immediately. You can almost hear his thoughts racing. The weight of the hypothetical. The trap embedded inside it. Finally, he speaks. I don't know, he says honestly. Joy's gaze sharpens. That uncertainty says something. It says the world changes, he replies. It says industries evolve. It says timing matters. An advantage? Joy adds. Everyone has some, Hugh says. And everyone lacks some. A murmur of agreement spreads. Joy shakes her head slightly. That sounds like a cop-out. The word hits like a slap. For the first time, Hugh's composure flickers. Not outwardly dramatic. Just a tightening around the eyes. A firmer set to his jaw. I don't think acknowledging complexity is a cop-out, he says. I think it's honest. Joy leans forward again. Honesty would be admitting that the system favored you. And humility, Hugh counters, is admitting you don't control the entire system. Applause breaks out, louder now. Sustained. Joy glances briefly at the audience. She hears the shift. Feels it. But she doesn't retreat. Do you ever worry, she asks quietly, that pushing back like this makes you look out of touch? The question is softer, but sharper. Hugh meets her eyes. I worry more about staying silent, he says. That line lands. Hard. The audience reacts instantly, applause, whistles, a few cheers. Joy's expression tightens, but she nods slowly. So this is you speaking up? Yes, Hugh says simply. And what are you saying? He pauses. The cameras zoom in. I'm saying, he begins, voice steady but infused with something deeper now, that accountability matters. Representation matters. Growth matters. But so does recognizing individual effort. So does resisting narratives that flatten people into symbols. Joy watches him carefully. And I'm saying, he continues, that progress doesn't require tearing down everyone who succeeded before the change. The studio erupts. Not unanimously, but powerfully. Joy raises her voice slightly over the applause. No one's tearing you down. It feels like you're trying to, Hugh says. Gasps ripple across the room. One of the co-hosts audibly inhales. Joy's posture stiffens. I'm asking hard questions. And I'm answering them, Hugh replies. Directly. The air crackles. There's no laughter now. No playful tone. Just two seasoned communicators locked in a battle of framing. Joy's voice drops lower. Are you uncomfortable? Hugh doesn't hesitate. A little. The honesty surprises even her. But discomfort isn't the enemy, he adds. Disrespect is. The audience reacts again, this time a mix of applause and stunned silence. Joy's eyes flash. Are you accusing me of being disrespectful? I'm saying, he replies carefully, that implying I should apologize for success feels dismissive of the work behind it. Joy leans back slowly. For a split second, it looks like she might fire back harder. Instead, she studies him. You're not as easygoing as you seem, she says. Hugh's mouth curves into the faintest smile. No one is, he replies. A few audience members laugh nervously. The tension doesn't break, but it shifts. Joy glances at her notes, then back at him. Do you think audiences are too sensitive now? Hugh shakes his head. I think audiences are more aware. And that's good. Yes. Even when it leads to public backlash? Yes. Joy's eyes narrow. So you accept the possibility that this conversation might create backlash for you? Hugh doesn't flinch. If standing up for nuance creates backlash, he says, then maybe that says something about where we are. The room goes silent again. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. But the pushback is unmistakable now. Joy folds her hands together. You came ready, she says. Hugh tilts his head slightly. I came open. The distinction hangs between them. Behind the cameras, the producer finally signals, wrap it up. But there's one last question in Joy's eyes. And she asks it. Do you think you're being misunderstood? Hugh considers for a long moment. Yes, he says quietly. But that's part of being human. The audience exhales collectively. The applause that follows is louder than anything before it. Not because someone won, but because something real just happened. The music cue begins faintly in the background. Joy forces a small smile. We'll be right back. The camera pulls wide. But even as it does, you can see it. The story isn't over. Not by a long shot. Because what just unfolded wasn't a tidy debate. It was a fracture. And fractures don't stay contained to studio walls. They spread. And outside those doors, the world is already reacting. The music fades to commercial, but inside the studio of The View, the silence is louder than the applause that came before it. Cameras dip slightly. Stage managers rush forward. Makeup artists hover at the edges, unsure whether to step in or stay back. The audience shifts in their seats, whispering, replaying the exchange in hushed, urgent tones. And at the center of it all sit Hugh Jackman and Joy Behar. No longer just guest and host, but two figures suspended in the aftermath of something raw. Hugh leans back in his chair, rolling his shoulders once, as if releasing tension he didn't realize he'd been carrying. His expression is composed, but there's a flicker behind his eyes, adrenaline still coursing, heart still racing. Joy flips her cue cards over and sets them down on the table with deliberate calm. For a moment, neither speaks. Then Joy breaks it. Well, she says, her voice lower now, less performative. That was lively. A faint smile crosses Hugh's face. You don't do dull television. A few crew members chuckle nervously. Joy studies him, head tilted slightly. You surprised me. How so? Hugh asks. You pushed back harder than most guests do. He pauses, considering. I don't think I pushed harder. I just didn't step back. The distinction hangs in the air. A producer approaches the table. We're going to shorten the next segment, she says quietly. This is trending already. Joy raises an eyebrow. Already? The producer nods. Clips are going up. Social media's lighting up. Hugh glances toward the large monitor offstage, where a live feed of the broadcast runs on a slight delay. His own face stares back at him from moments earlier, calm, firm, resolute. It feels surreal. Moments ago, he was answering questions. Now those answers are fragments, cut, clipped, captioned, spreading across timelines and screens. Joy leans back in her chair again. You know how this works, she says quietly. People will pick sides. Hugh nods. They already have. The producer checks her headset. We're back in 30 seconds. Joy straightens in her seat. The familiar television composure returns like a mask slipping back into place. Shoulders squared. Chin lifted. Professional. Hugh adjusts his jacket, inhales deeply once, and nods to himself. 30 seconds. The countdown echoes faintly from the control room. 10, 9, 8. The red lights flare back on. The applause sign flashes. And just like that, they're live again. Joy turns to camera first, voice smooth and practiced. Welcome back. We're here with Hugh Jackman, and we've been having quite the conversation. The audience offers a polite, slightly cautious round of applause. Hugh smiles, but it's different now. Not the carefree grin from earlier. This one is grounded. Intentional. Joy pivots. Let's shift gears for a moment, she says. Your new project explores themes of identity and reinvention. Given what we were just discussing, that feels timely. Hugh nods. It does. Joy gestures toward him. Tell us about that. He leans forward slightly, hands clasped loosely. It's about a man confronting who he thought he was versus who he actually is, Hugh begins. It's about realizing that growth requires letting go of old narratives. There's a subtle emphasis there. Joy notices. Old narratives, she repeats. Yes, Hugh says evenly. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and the stories others tell about us. The audience is quiet, listening more intently now. Joy's eyes narrow slightly, not in hostility, but in calculation. Do you feel like narratives are being imposed on you? She asks. Hugh doesn't hesitate this time. Yes. The word lands softly, but carries weight. Joy tilts her head. Such as, that my career can be summarized by a single lens, Hugh replies. That my motivations are simplistic. That my silence on certain issues means indifference. Joy studies him carefully. And are they? She asks. No, Hugh says steady. They're not. A murmur of approval ripples through the audience. Joy folds her hands. But you understand why people question power. Of course, Hugh says. I question it too. There's a pause. Then Joy asks quietly, do you see yourself as powerful? Hugh considers. In some spaces, he says. Yes. And what do you do with that power? The question feels different this time. Less accusatory. More probing. Hugh's gaze softens slightly. I try to listen, he says. I try to elevate voices when I can. I try to lead by example rather than declaration. Joy nods slowly. And when someone challenges you, he allows himself the faintest smile. I engage. A ripple of laughter moves through the audience. Joy smiles back, just barely. Yes, she says. You do. There's a shift now, not resolution, but recognition. Two strong personalities acknowledging the other's ground. But tension doesn't dissolve so easily. Joy glances briefly toward the audience before turning back to him. Some critics might say this entire exchange is a reflection of celebrity fragility, she says. That being questioned feels threatening. Hugh's eyes sharpen slightly. I don't feel threatened, he says. I feel mischaracterized. Joy leans in. Explain that. When the framing assumes guilt, he says carefully, before understanding context, it limits dialogue. Joy studies him. And do you think I assumed guilt? There it is again. Direct. Unflinching. Hugh meets her gaze. I think you assumed advantage, he replies, and conflated that with wrongdoing. The audience reacts audibly, some gasps, some applause. Joy's lips part slightly. That's a strong statement, she says. So is the question, he responds. The air tightens once more. One of the co-hosts finally jumps in, attempting balance. I think what we're seeing here is two perspectives on accountability. Joy nods slowly, but her eyes remain locked on Hugh. Do you regret pushing back? She asks suddenly. The question is almost personal. Hugh shakes his head. No, he says. I regret if it felt combative. But I don't regret clarifying my position. Joy leans back. Fair enough. It's not surrender. But it's something. The audience senses it. The final minutes of the segment tick down. Joy glances at the clock, then back at him. Last question, she says. What would you say to viewers who feel frustrated watching this? Hugh doesn't rush. I'd say, he begins, voice calm but resonant, frustration can be a starting point. not an endpoint. We don't have to agree on everything to respect each other. The audience breaks into applause again, stronger, more unified this time. Joy nods once. And what would you say to those who think you should have just smiled and nodded? A faint, almost playful glint appears in Hugh's eyes. I've done that before, he says. Today, I chose not to. The room erupts. Not chaotic, but energized. Joy lets out a short laugh despite herself. You certainly did. The closing music begins to swell. Joy turns to camera. Hugh Jackman, everyone. The applause rises once more as the camera pulls wide. Hugh stands, offering a gracious nod to the audience. Joy stands too. They shake hands. It's firm, polite, but layered with everything that just transpired. As the camera fades out, viewers at home are already typing, tweeting, posting, debating. Clips are circulating with captions like Hugh Jackman fires back and Joy Behar grills Hollywood star. Inside the studio, the audience begins to file out, but the buzz doesn't fade. A young woman near the front turns to her friend. He didn't yell, she whispers. But he didn't back down. Her friend nods. That's what made it intense. Backstage, Hugh steps into the corridor, finally alone for a brief moment. He exhales deeply, pressing a hand against the cool wall. He knows what's coming. Headlines. Hot takes. Think pieces. Supporters. Critics. Because what happened wasn't explosive in volume. It was explosive in restraint. And sometimes quiet defiance echoes louder than a shout. Behind him, Joy exits from the opposite side of the stage, already surrounded by staff discussing angles, framing, tomorrow's follow-up. Two narratives forming. Two interpretations spreading. And outside the studio walls, the world is choosing which version to believe. The confrontation is no longer contained. It's viral. And the real storm is just beginning. By the time the sun dips behind the skyline, the clip has traveled farther than anyone inside the studio of The View could have imagined. It starts as a 30-second excerpt, then a 60-second cut, then a slowed-down, captioned, zoomed-in replay of the exact moment Hugh Jackman says, "It feels like you're trying to." Freeze frame. Zoom on his expression. Zoom on Joy Behar's reaction. And just like that, the narrative fractures into 1,000 interpretations. Some headlines read, Hugh Jackman calmly dismantles host live on air. Others counter. Joy Behar holds Hollywood star accountable. On social media, the debate is relentless. One viral post declares, "This is how you push back respectfully." It racks up hundreds of thousands of likes within hours. Another insists, privilege defending itself in real time. Two camps. Two readings. Same footage. Late that afternoon, entertainment reporters gather outside the studio entrance, hoping for a post-show comment. Cameras line the sidewalk. Microphones hover like metal flowers waiting to bloom. When Hugh steps out, the flashes ignite instantly. Hugh, any regrets about what you said? Were you blindsided by the questions? Do you think the host was unfair? He pauses for a fraction of a second, absorbing the barrage. Then he smiles, not the polished red carpet smile. A smaller one. Measured. I believe in conversation, he says simply. That's all. He doesn't elaborate. He doesn't escalate. He steps into the waiting car, and the door closes. Across town, Joy exits from another entrance. She faces a smaller group of reporters, but the energy is just as sharp. Joy, do you think he was defensive? Was it personal? She adjusts her glasses, chin lifted. I ask questions, she says. That's my job. Nothing more. Nothing less. And yet, the silence between their statements speaks volumes. That night, primetime panels replay the exchange frame by frame. Pundits dissect tone. Body language experts analyze posture. One commentator claims Hugh's jaw tension signaled suppressed anger. Another argues Joy's forward lean showed strategic control. The internet does what it always does. It amplifies. Clips circulate with dramatic music layered underneath. Memes appear within hours. Side-by-side images captioned smile and nod versus stand and speak. Even actors and comedians begin weighing in, carefully worded posts about dialogue, nuance, media framing. Inside Hugh's home, the glow of a phone screen lights the room as notifications stack endlessly. Messages from colleagues, from friends, from strangers. Some read, proud of you. Others, you missed the point. He scrolls once, twice. Then he sets the phone down. Across the city, Joy scrolls too. She's no stranger to backlash. No stranger to support. She's weathered decades of public scrutiny. But even for her, the velocity feels different. She pauses on one clip, the moment he says, "I worry more about staying silent." She replays it. Once. Twice. The next morning, the studio buzzes louder than usual. Staff members whisper near coffee machines. Producers huddle over analytics dashboards glowing with skyrocketing view counts. Ratings spike. Engagement explodes. What was meant to be a standard promotional interview has become a cultural flashpoint. By midday, a longer, unedited version of the segment is uploaded online. Viewers watch the full context. Some shift their opinions. Others double down. Comment sections flood with debate. He stayed calm the entire time. She asked what needed to be asked. He didn't attack, he clarified. She didn't attack, she challenged. And maybe that's the point. The exchange refuses to fit neatly into villain and hero. Days pass, but the momentum doesn't fade. A respected columnist publishes an op-ed titled "The Politeness of Pushback." It argues that the real shock wasn't hostility. It was refusal to submit to framing. Another article counters with charm as shield, suggesting that composure can mask resistance to critique. The story evolves beyond two individuals. It becomes symbolic, about power, accountability, tone, masculinity, media. And somewhere in the swirl, the original human moment risks being swallowed. A live audience member posts her perspective online. She writes about how the room felt, about the silence before the applause, about the electricity when Hugh admitted discomfort but refused disrespect. Her post goes viral because she captures something the clipped videos didn't: the tension of breathing in a room where no one knew what would happen next. A week later, Hugh appears at a film premiere. Reporters circle back immediately. "Do you stand by what you said?" "Yes," he answers calmly. "Would you do anything differently?" A pause. "I'd still speak," he says. "But I'd listen even more." It's a subtle addition, not a retreat, an expansion. Meanwhile, Joy addresses the moment on a subsequent episode. She sits at the same table, same lights overhead. "Last week's conversation sparked strong reactions," she says. "That's okay. Dialogue should." She doesn't apologize. She doesn't attack. She reframes. Sometimes discomfort means something real is being discussed. The audience applauds. And just like that, the aftermath shifts from confrontation to reflection. But online, the fire still flickers. Supporters of Hugh celebrate what they call measured courage. Supporters of Joy praise unflinching questioning. The most interesting voices, though, are the ones in between. The ones who write, "I didn't agree with everything either said, but I'm glad neither backed down." Because what happened wasn't a shouting match. It wasn't scandal. It was tension, visible, unscripted, unresolved. And in an era of rehearsed answers and media training, that felt almost radical. Back in the quiet of his home, Hugh reflects privately. He replays the moment she called his answer a cop-out. The split second he considered softening his response. He's glad he didn't. Not because he won, but because he was honest. Joy, in her own space, reflects too. She thinks about the word defensive, about the way the audience shifted when he said, "I worry more about staying silent." She doesn't regret asking, but she acknowledges, internally, that the pushback was sharper than expected. Two professionals, two convictions, one live broadcast that neither could fully control. And perhaps that's why it resonated. Because control slipped. Authenticity surfaced. And viewers felt it. Now, weeks later, the clip still circulates. Not as feverishly, not as explosively, but steadily. It's used in media classes to discuss framing, in opinion pieces about masculinity and dialogue, in debates about how far questioning should go, and how firmly one should respond. And every time someone watches it for the first time, they lean forward at the same moment. The same line, the same shift. Because what happens when someone known for charm decides to push back? The answer isn't chaos. It isn't cancellation. It isn't triumph. It's conversation, messy, layered, human. And that's what makes it powerful. Now we want to hear from you. Was Hugh right to stand his ground? Did Joy ask necessary questions? Did the tension reveal something deeper about celebrity, accountability, and respect? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. This isn't just their conversation anymore. It's ours. And if you felt the electricity of that studio, if you could almost hear the silence between words, if you believe real moments happen when scripts fall away, subscribe to Stage View. Like this video. Share it with someone who loves seeing the curtain pulled back on the moments that shake the spotlight. Because here on Stage View, we don't just replay interviews. We step inside them, and the next explosive story is already waiting.